I grew up in Brooklyn College during the Vietnam War days, and I had a difficult time. I used to tell this story where the Vietnam War was understood differently then. I mean, why were we there? I mean, I knew the history. One thing I always make a big point about is knowing history, knowing what happened. If you don't know what happened, you really have a difficult time forming opinions. So I remember when actually Kennedy started the involvement much more than it was, and followed by Johnson, then the Gulf and Tonkin incident, which of course may have been staged, it may not have been staged.
According to Jesse Ventura, it was.
Yeah,
you heard of the Gulf of Tonkin?
I'm sure a lot of it was. A lot of the stuff you find out today that we accepted more on face value. But one thing was not the presence of the USSR and all the countries and all the communism as it was in that time, and China was there and real and was ever present. Now, who was Ho Chi Minh? I used to debate people in college. Ho Chi Minh was one of the few liberation movements that were fighting the French after the French controlled Indochina, which was Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, all those countries before the war. And then Japan threw them out, and then when Japan lost the war, the French wanted to come back in and take over back with their colonial rights. And there were various liberation movements, communists being the most powerful ones that are usually the most, shall we say, I'm lacking, forgetting the word. But Ho Chi Minh was one of them. And
he was a communist liberation.
Oh yeah, he was
North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh.
It became North Vietnam. So the war, he won the final battle. It was called Dien Bien Phu. You remember that? That was somewhere in North Vietnam, and they agreed at that time to split.
Great battle.
It was an interesting story, but they agreed to split Vietnam into two countries.
Right.
One south.
Ho Chi Minh was the general of the North Vietnamese, right?
He was the leader. He was not a general.
Wait, so sorry.
He was not a military general.
To interrupt for a second, so you're explaining why you supported the Vietnam War in college?
Yeah, I supported the American effort in general to try to prevent communist expansion. Okay. The American position always was that if you don't support the South, the North will take it over, and then it will take over Cambodia, and then they'll take over Laos. It was called the domino theory.
Yeah.
And the left used to laugh at that. No, domino theory is a big joke. And in fact, that's exactly what happened.
And did you rout out your fellow classmates as communists amongst your midst at Brooklyn College?
I don't think I've ever met someone who supported Vietnam.
At the time. I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
The
new left.
I don't know if he does now.
You don't hear a lot of...
The new left, as they were known then in colleges, in Brooklyn College, they opposed the American war, and they said, well, Ho Chi Minh would win an election if it was run that day. I said, yeah, Ho Chi Minh took over North Vietnam in 1952, 53, I forgot the year, and in the first year, 1.5 million North Vietnamese escaped to the South because it's tyrannical. You know what communist regimes are like and what they do. That's how you win an election. Of course, but people don't think. Yes.
Okay.
So yes, is the American support flawed? I'm sure it is. But I remember debating them, and the left would say we shouldn't be there, and they would belong there, and I would say, okay, so if you wouldn't be there, then the North would just simply swallow up the South and continue from there. And in fact, that's exactly what took place at the end of the day. And then Laos fell, and Cambodia. Cambodia had the most horrific communist regime under Pol Pot.
Yeah, right. The massacres.
Massacred 2 million people.
The Khmer Rouge.
Khmer Rouge, right?
Because they believed in a perfect agrarian society.
Agrarian meaning farming.
Farming, and they killed everyone with glasses.
All intelligentsia. Right. If you had any wrong thoughts. And that's what crazy. You have today, and it's scary. I watch all these things happening today where we can't do. You watch now January 6th, okay? Let's take that as an example.
Wow.
You had January 6th.
And drove right into it. Hard right to January 6th.
But think about it for a second. Yeah. Think about it. I forget about everything. Where were you on January?